Well, let's go ahead and get started. The new attendees are quieting down, and if everyone's ready. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's CUlytics webinar. My name is Dale DeVaz, the R&D strategist at STCU, and I'm a community chairperson for CUlytics, and it's my pleasure to be hosting today's event. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone that we're just 7 weeks away from the 2018 Credit Union Analytics Summit. That's March 13th through 15th at the Microsoft Commons in Redmond, Washington. This year, the slate of speakers featured in the first 2 days is really exceptional, and as you may have heard, a third day has been added featuring hands-on workshops. So to see a full agenda and to register, visit culytics.com and click the 2018 Summit link at the top. Please do plan to attend. It's going to be a really special event. 3 modest bits of housekeeping to get started here. Number one, I'd like to ask that all participants on today's call please make sure to keep your phones on mute during the presentation. Number 2, do feel free to submit questions through the chat feature on your screens, and we'll address what questions we can at the end of the hour. And number 3, the session is being recorded, and we will make it available through the CUlytics YouTube channel later in the week so that you can share it with others in your organizations. So now on to today's presentation, Making Customer 360 a Reality for Credit Unions. Our speaker is Jennifer McGinn, who got her MBA from Case Western Reserve University and spent 13 years in product marketing at IBM, working with Hadoop, stream computing, and master data management. In 2017, just this past year, she moved to Allsight, a leading customer intelligence management company headquartered in Toronto, but she works out of Chicago, leading the company's marketing strategy and execution program. She's agreed to share insights on the successful implementation of intelligent customer 360s in industries like ours, and it's a particular delight to have her bring her latest thinking to this CUlytics audience. So thank you, Jennifer, and welcome.
Thank you, Dale. I'm so excited to be here with you all. This is such an amazing organization, bringing kind of this thought leadership, different technologies, to bear with respect to credit union. And as all the beeps were coming in, I started to see that this is a very, very hot topic. It seems like everyone is interested and is very excited to share with you, and looking forward to ongoing conversations and answering any questions at the end of the presentation. So what I want to share with you is our view on how a Customer 360 can really enhance the overall customer experience, and kind of the initiatives that all credit unions have around providing the best customer service and customer support. We have been using this term Customer 360 for what feels like decades, and probably has been decades, and there's been many different technologies, many different approaches that have kind of promised a Customer 360, but with new requirements that are out there around big data, around the customer expectations, we're finding that those legacy technologies really weren't providing that true intelligent Customer 360, Dale, that you just mentioned. So would love to kind of share our thoughts with you today. So I want to start out with one of my favorite quotes, and everything that you'll see that we're going to chat about today really is focused on that customer experience and looking at the changing customer behavior. So customer behavior is changing significantly, and everyone's thinking about how to create the best customer experience possible. So I love this quote by Steve Jobs that says, you got to start with defining that customer experience and then work backwards to the technology. So we're probably, most of us on this call, we think technology first. What data and analytics solutions can we throw at the problem? So let's think about what customer experience we want to create and provide for our constituents, and then figure out what technology, what data is needed to support that. So I really love kind of putting our minds in this frame, putting that customer first. And I think that goes right hand in hand with the true value prop and competitive differentiator of credit unions as a whole, kind of built on the premise of satisfied customers. Everything from the way that credit unions are organized to, you know, probably most of your value statements are all around the members and around that customer satisfaction. So even though credit unions are less widely used than other banks, they're definitely the leaders, and they set the standard for customer satisfaction. And I think some of those more traditional banks are starting to catch on. But we all know that no matter how good you are at something, there's always ways to improve. So how can we gather more information about our members, about customers across credit unions, and how can we use that information to provide everyone at the bank with more information to be able to serve those members better? So disruption is kind of all around us and very, very prevalent when it comes to missions around customer experience. And kind of no industry is safe, I would say. And if we think of disruptions both from a technology and data standpoint, there's more information being generated and thrown at us, and more traditional industries going digital, as I air quote digital. And then on the other hand, there's also disruption from a customer standpoint. More customers are demanding more self-service. They're demanding more personalization. They're demanding more real-time services, kind of right here, right now, and they're not wanting to wait around for it. So all of this disruption means that even credit unions that have nailed customer service and that customer experience still have more work to do and still need to always be innovating and thinking, how can we use data and analytics better to fulfill that promise of that customer experience, like we read in the Steve Jobs quote earlier. So let's kind of get into this. So here's some stats that I find really interesting. These aren't specific or unique to credit unions, but I think applicable if you kind of take the numbers with a grain of salt. And this is, as we kind of figure out how to build out that customer 360, we can see how having more and more information about our customers and being able to serve it up in very usable and action-oriented ways could help to tilt the scales on some of these figures. So let's kind of start on the left side at looking at bad experiences. So this first stat, rather alarming, 95% of customers will tell others about a bad experience. So not only now is an individual who has a bad experience with any organization, whether it be a credit union, a bank, a retailer, anything, not only do they just tell their friends, neighbors, and loved ones, they can tweet about it. They are not only telling their friends and family, they're telling everyone. So every organization has a big responsibility to ensure fewer and fewer bad experiences, or else news is going to kind of explode out there without you having any control. So people are talking and people are listening. 67% of customer churn is due to only one bad experience. As much as we can control the experiences that our members have at credit unions, just one bad one and they could leave. So another area of disruption that I didn't mention earlier is the cost of switching. The loyalty has definitely been, on a downward trend. It is much easier for anyone to pick up and leave an institution, and it's just, for the most part, our society in general doesn't have as much issue with kind of switching from brand to brand, from provider to provider. So ensuring that we can keep that churn in hand and keep those experiences down, very, very important, because only one bad experience could cause someone to jump. Another stat, it takes 12 positive experiences to make up for that bad one. So I always used to think, how many touch points, how long does it take for you to build 12 positive experiences with one of your members? Making up for one bad one, very, very costly. On the kind of good customer experience side, we have an opportunity by creating good customer experiences to gain loyalty. 82% of customers say good customer service, means resolving issues quickly. 74% say they'll spend more money if they have a good customer experience, and then 86% say that they would pay more, pay a premium to have a good customer experience. So it kind of goes hand in hand. We need to reduce the bad, increase the good, and so how can we do that? So let's take a look at why we have bad customer experiences. Potentially, why are our members not feeling the love all the time from credit unions that they expect to really be kind of handheld through? So we've got lots and lots of customers, and they are interacting across multiple channels. So they're coming into and meeting with tellers face-to-face. They're engaging in web chat or email conversations. They're doing self-service either online or on their mobile device, generating a ton of data. This data not only is segmented, siloed, but it is little bits and fragments of information. We're not just talking about traditional master data where we may have a name, address, contact information, but we're talking about an email here, a social media account here, a complaint here, a conversation that happens over there, fragments of data, making it very, very difficult to build a full contextual view of those millions of customers to be able to then offer consistent experiences across those multiple channels. That all can lead to bad experiences. Inconsistency, lack of personalization, and even mistakes or errors in marketing outreach, which could have very negative results. So here's a look at where data traditionally has been stored. As we've come up with new ways to manage huge volumes of information generated by all those devices and digital components that we mentioned, we've, in a sense, created more silos for ourselves, right? So if we kind of start at the bottom, we've got departmental platforms like customer data platforms, typically managed by a marketing department for marketing use cases, interaction repositories, data warehouses, master data management, where we kind of started this thought about a customer 360 view or a single view of the customer, and then data lakes, utilizing Hadoop and other open source technologies to kind of be able to throw all data into a system. Storage became cheaper, so we were able to capture more information, but it still lacked the ability to gain any insights from that information, to make any sense of it. You're probably left with tons and tons of insights hiding in something like a data lake without being able to really expose it to users and take any action or do any analytics on it. So we see the problem has really been in these legacy applications, probably that are in some of your four walls, that the problem was the handoff between the data and analytics. It was resulting in more silos of customer data, disconnected data, potentially an incorrect, a not complete contextual view of that customer because there was bits and pieces of fragmented data stored in multiple places, and then a real lack of any intelligence about that information, meaning we're not able to enrich it in these existing systems. We're just able to maybe find it or maybe connect it, and maybe not even that. So let's take a deeper look at kind of this poor handoff that could occur. So for example, in a data lake, we've poured terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data into a lake, and now we want to do some segmentation to be able to understand different customer segments, whether they be from a geographic standpoint or a economic standpoint. And that segmentation is really being done based on incomplete data, and that could potentially have a result of prioritizing the wrong services to the wrong customers. So we've got a segment, but it's not meeting our business objective. Likewise, through something like master data management or an interaction repository, we can join customer IDs, which is looking at kind of that level of core master data. But in order to do, let's say, journey analytics, really understand the customer's journey from prospect to customer to loyal to retention, to risk of churn, we're missing information about many interactions that member or customer has with us, different events that could be happening and individual transactions. That's not part of those traditional master data management repositories. So we could result in incorrect analytics and incorrect next best action, let's say. And then finally, data warehouses, you know, once again, a great kind of landing place to be able to then do analytics on data. If we're looking to predict customer churn, but we don't have the context, there's no context of relationships or events stored in that data warehouse, then we're probably delivering the wrong offer at the wrong time. So not only is kind of the status quo of our IT environment not providing that customer 360, but it could potentially be resulting in the wrong action. So how can we address that? So this is kind of a summary of what we just went through, and kind of states that the status quo of both our data management strategies as well as our analytical tools, they really aren't good enough anymore. They are great underlying technology. They still provide sufficient ways to manage and store information, but we need another level in our architecture, another layer in our architecture to really put context to that data and build intelligence for analytics. So I won't go through each of these. I touched on many of these technologies and many of the risks that are kind of occurring now that we have these new requirements around managing so much information and meeting ever-changing customer expectations. So let's talk about the right approach. The right approach is really to combine data analytics and action into an integrated initiative. Integrated might mean a single system. It might mean that these systems are talking and interacting with each other. But the goal is to be able to build context from our data, serve it up to analytical tools, and then enable different parts of the organization to take action on that insight. So one area that is kind of bridging this gap between data and analytics is a new category of technologies called customer intelligence platforms. And you may have been doing some reading about this term. It's kind of up and coming. Cheryl Kingstone from 451 Research has been talking about this type of technology and the need for it in some of her writing and research. And if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share some of that with you. We can kind of connect after the presentation. But a customer intelligence platform is all about leveraging the most modern technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing, coupled with traditional customer data matching techniques, and then adding intelligence on it. So we want to connect all customer data and build context around it, and then enrich that customer 360, and I'll show more examples of this in a few minutes, enrich it with intelligence. And what that means is using machine learning algorithms to pull fragments of data together to build that intelligence. So not just a static view of a customer, but a real-time evolution of that customer and your relationship with them. And then once again, serve that up to different areas of the organization, different tools, different systems to be able to act on that information. So here's a look at kind of the flow of information through a customer intelligence management, a customer intelligence platform, and how it aims to improve the overall customer experience. So a customer intelligence platform starts by ingesting any data source and then deriving intelligence on that data. And there's a couple key terms that are coming about that are kind of an evolution from traditional matching and data quality and governance, which is synthesis. Synthesis is the ability to link not only core customer information and records, but also data fragments. So think of this as being able to synthesize every bit of customer information and understand who's who and who's where, and bring it all together into a Customer 360, and then expand that Customer 360 view by inferring intelligent attributes. And I'll show some examples. But this is using machine learning to kind of learn about customers. It's also using natural language processing to be able to pull out fragments of data from information that a customer might not be providing in a simple, straightforward way. And then being able to recall that Customer 360 view for different perspectives, different users' needs across the organization. So if we look on the right-hand side, we see all these different areas of an organization, from marketing to customer service, sales, governance, IT, data scientists, and analytics. And they all have different needs and different views of a customer. So not only can we look at a prospect versus a customer, but we can look at it from the eyes of a marketer who may need, to understand a good amount about a customer in a segment, but doesn't need it to be 100% accurate. Maybe an 80% confidence that these customers match is good enough for a marketing campaign, whereas someone in sales or billing might need a much higher level of confidence that these customer records are the same and this individual is one individual. If we've got two records, we're looking at one individual. So looking at something like data matching can vary by user perspective. There's also different, as we get into kind of the all-site offering in a few minutes, there's different applications that these different user perspectives can rely on to do different aspects of their job, which we'll get into. So here's a view of what synthesis is doing. It's connecting not only parties to parties, but also data to parties and data to data. So one way that I like to think of synthesis is it utilizes many different matching techniques. Everything from probabilistic matching to, one example that I like to use is, let's say we know a customer and they sent an email, but the information we have about a customer lacks an email address or even lacks an occupation, let's say. But somewhere in that email that we received, the email address is there, and it might be separated physically from the person's name, from their signature, and from the context of the email. And then the signature in the email may have their title and occupation and where they work. Well, the process of synthesis can then pull and extract that information from that email and add it into the customer profile that we are building, the Customer 360 that continues to evolve. So we're pulling fragments of that information through different interactions with that customer to expand and enrich that Customer 360. So not only did this customer, fill out a form, open an account, give us their contact information, but through different interactions like email, even could be social media, could be a web chat, could be many other interactions, we can continually pull information out and add it to that Customer 360, continuing to build the view of that member, of that customer, in a very contextual way. So that's how synthesis differs from traditional matching of just taking, John and Jonathan are the same person. John Smith and Jonathan Smith are the same person. It also looks at relationships and identifies a much broader view of that member. And then reasoning, see if this builds. Reasoning takes kind of that same information, but attempts to enhance the profile by deriving insights. These insights can be things like different experiences or life events, inferring relationships, inferring attitudes or sentiment that aren't explicitly told through interactions, but through different things that we know about a customer, the system can start to infer. And that, once again, gets added to now make this Customer 360 very, very intelligent. More information than we ever knew before, and kind of the opposite of a static Customer 360, a very intelligent, Reasoning 360. So let's take a look at what this Customer 360 now looks like with both sides, both the synthesis or the left brain, kind of that traditional left brain thinking. Here is where we're storing core customer data, things like identity, demographics, content information, also the portfolio, all of the accounts that this member has with the credit union, all the assets that they hold, contracts and documents. In addition, every transaction, all the transaction history. This is something that wasn't done in traditional master data management applications. Every transaction and interaction wasn't captured, but now through this intelligent Customer 360, we can capture that. So these interactions and external data is also incorporated. And then from a reasoning standpoint, or right brain thinking, we're inferring things like enriching the profile with occupation, as I mentioned, experiences, life events, customer journey, insights, relationships, households, and then attitude and sentiment, as I mentioned. So this is really building an amazingly broad view of our members. So I want to walk you through some of the applications that Allsite provides, and you can kind of see how this concept of building out a Customer 360 can really be put into practice and leveraged across your organization. So the first thing I'm showing here is an operational dashboard, and this really provides a complete view of member information for different operational use cases. So what we're seeing is different panes here, and this can be utilized by a customer service representative, a banking representative, et cetera, that's working with different members across the different areas of the business. So we have kind of a purchase history, or what product lines does this member own, everything from investments to personal accounts to mortgages and other loans. Also different mentions and interactions here kind of on those bottom panes. So we're pulling from third-party social media tools to see when and where this member is talking about our credit union. And then we see a view of service history, and then on the right, a pane that gives any alerts or notifications that might be very relevant to, let's say, that customer service representative to be able to know and take action on in real time. And then the system looks at the overall customer value. So what is this member's churn risk, and what's their potential? So all of this information can be shown directly to that rep in real time as they are engaging and interacting with the customer. And all this is being pulled from that Customer 360 view that is being built from both the data we know about the customer and the data we're inferring about that member. We can also look at this from a customer journey perspective and see the interactions over time, and really be able to take action, identify different priorities, identify things that are outstanding, et cetera. Another view is a graph view. Graph database has become a very important tool in the world of big data, and a way to visualize and dynamically see how different members are related to each other, how they are connected, what their relationships are, and be able to kind of navigate or traverse the graph. Marketers may use this to kind of understand different interactions, different relationships, and drill down and as I said, traverse through the graph to see how people are connected and really what's driving customer behavior. And then at the segment level, we can kind of go up a level and view members by customer segment. These can either be by sentiment, so look at all customers that, all members that may have a negative sentiment. What actions can we take to, send out a campaign to kind of regain their trust and build more loyalty there. We can look at different keywords on the bottom left here that people might be talking about, different keywords that are showing up either in social media conversations that are talking about our credit union, et cetera, and we can drill down there. And then we can look at product by sentiment as well. So this is a interactive view that can drill up and down all the way from the segment down through to the individual and back to that operational view that I showed before. And then from a data stewardship perspective, this is something that that is really interesting in the world of big data. And if we go back to kind of this need to collect more and more information about our members and our customers, is as we begin to start to need to match those records together and perform stewardship on them, our data stewards are getting overloaded, right? Their backlog is bigger than they can manage. So we need a way to automate that in the world of big data. No longer are we working with millions of records, we're working with billions. So this tool allows us to make mass decisions and really scale the governance and stewardship of information. We're enabling them to link and unlink records using machine learning and natural language processing to be able to automate the process more and more. So this is a dashboard around the customer link, which is the data stewardship application. And so what does this Customer 360 really enable a credit union to do? We mentioned before, of course, that credit unions are very strong and built on that customer satisfaction value. But having a broader Customer 360 can really go from being customer aware to customer led. And I see this in many different industries. Even traditional banks are going from being account focused to being customer focused, another area of potential disruption and competitive. Going from being data rich, having a lot of information, to being driven by those insights. So not just storing information in Hadoop, but being able to gather insights out of it. And then going from being perfect to being fast and efficient. So not all data needs to be perfect to be able to make sense of it and gain those insights. And then going from being siloed and even departmentalized to being very connected across the entire organization and the entire customer journey. So here's some customer use cases for Customer 360, many of which are very, very applicable for credit unions. So micro-segmentation and targeting, being able to identify different segments, as we mentioned, kind of based on geography or income level or other offers that might be out there. From a marketing standpoint, very important to be able to do that marketing segmentation, targeted marketing. Customer journey optimization, being able to identify any friction points along that customer journey and identify when and where they're happening. If someone is jumping from web interactions to needing to come into a branch or a location, how can we smooth that out and use the information we know about that customer to positively optimize that journey. Retention, attrition and modeling and retention use cases. Customer survey and feedback analysis is another big one, being able to incorporate NPS score and other feedback into that Customer 360 so it can be made available to anyone interacting with that customer. And then one thing I didn't mention is that a great value is being able to embed this new Customer 360 directly into the applications and the tools that that the customer service reps and others are using. So it's not it doesn't necessarily have to be a net new application, but we want to embed that Customer 360 directly in either Salesforce or whatever other application is being used. So all of these use cases are really built on foundational starting points of that customer data lake that we mentioned, legacy MDM implementations, or creating that Customer 360 for CRM. And all of it starts with kind of building out that enterprise Customer 360, that Customer 360 view across the complete organization. So I challenge you to kind of look throughout your own organization and identify some of those key use cases where a new, enhanced, intelligent Customer 360 would really be valuable and make the most impact. And then take a look at the status quo. Take a look at what tools you have in place, what technologies are in place to be able to meet those customer experience objectives, and see, you know, where a new layer of technology can fit to be able to provide that Customer 360, and then socialize this idea of an intelligent customer 360 across the organization. So I love this this cartoon here of what if we don't change at all and something just magical happens. Probably won't happen. So there's steps we can take to kind of understand our customers better, get more information about our members, and really put it into action across the organization. So thank you all for your time, and I think we'll open it up for questions now, Dale.
Wow, thank you, Jennifer. This is great stuff. It really paints a vision for just how far our analytics ambitions can take us in serving delivering extraordinary member service. We did get one question come in over the chat. Others of you, please take this a minute to add your own questions through the chat channel. Greg asks a question, Jennifer, about a lot of your examples were focused on both sales and service and in improving that customer experience. Are there use cases, though, where credit unions and financial institutions take the improvements that the improved insights we get from Customer 360 in other more internal endeavors like analyzing or getting an early read on delinquent members or fraudulent activities, or are we seeing some payoff from Customer 360 in some of these back office interests?
Yeah, absolutely. I think many of the examples I used were on kind of the more operational kind of front end view, but definitely we are seeing many of the financial institutions that we work with are looking at it from the standpoint of how can we take this customer information that we now have, this broader customer view, and identify things like fraud, or be able to kind of classify different segments of our customer base and understand which are more likely to churn or which are more likely to not, make a payment on time. And how can we proactively then either reach out to them or reduce our contact with them, right? Sometimes losing a customer isn't the worst thing. But knowing who, kind of on the other side of that, knowing who our best customers are and how can we retain that loyalty and strengthen those most profitable customers is something that a lot of our organizations are using and taking the Customer 360 and the analytics to really get down deep into those use cases. So definitely those exist. I'd be happy to share some of the specific customer use cases that fall into those lines with you if you want to reach out via email. We've got some of those written.
Very good. Thank you, Jennifer. A question that I've had over the years, and it really goes to, once a person gets your arms around data from all of these different silos and finds all the relevant nuggets that would apply to a particular member, it occurs to me that you have far more than the average employee can absorb at a glance, when they're working with members either in a contact center or on the front line. And it comes to me, or it seems to me that an important piece is somehow finding the appropriate prioritization of the information, not just gathering it and putting it in pages and pages of screens for the employee to look at, but somehow distilling out the essential elements and what are the top 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 bits of information that are most relevant to the member that employees need to engage with them first and foremost. Are there some strategies that credit unions can look at to help with that exercise, or is it just taking one use case at a time and working through all those business rules one at a time?
No, I think that's a really good point, because as we kind of are infiltrated with all this information, how can we sift through all the noise to get to the real nuggets, right? I think social media is a great example of we can take all these social media feeds in, but which ones are really meaningful? So one thing that, utilizing something like machine learning to continually kind of look through the information, understand which interactions are most important, which are resulting in patterns and trends, and being able to serve that up through an operational view to different users is something that a system like this can be really set up to do. It's all meant to help reduce the amount of time that, a member's on the phone trying to solve an issue. It's meant to reduce the amount of time that they have to be face-to-face with someone to solve an issue, helping them to get to the point. So I think that's exactly what this is, what you want to kind of train the system, a system like this, to be able to do, right? A Customer 360 shouldn't just give you more information, it should give you the right information. And I think that something along the lines of journey and interactions is a great place to kind of start looking at to help prioritize those use cases. So how can we pick out the most relevant interactions to help with the next interaction with that customer? And I think using all this information to get to that prioritization is really helpful there.
Very good. I've got one more question. Remember, folks, use the chat over on the right-hand side of the screen if you've got a question for Jennifer. She's brought some great information about Customer 360 to bear here, and boy, it's percolating lots of questions in my mind. Please do feel free to ask your own. The one other question I have, Jennifer, is what's a reasonable starting place? At what, how far along does a person need to do or get in aggregating data to roll out a system that informs employees in various areas? Is it okay to start with a customer 180 and then build to a customer 270 and then eventually know that you're going to end up at customer 360? Or where's the point where you're delivering kind of a minimum critical value that you're not going to disappoint employees or mislead them? Do you need to go all the way to the nth degree, or are there starting points that come short of that?
Oh, I think that's a great point. You're actually putting an interesting visual in my head. But, we see many organizations either start with kind of dumping all that information in a data lake and just getting it to the point where you're identifying individual customers. So that single view of a customer kind of as a starting point. Let's just look at this core information and know that someone who has an account with us and someone who has, or a personal account with us and a business account with us and a loan are all the same person, so that we can kind of link all those accounts. It's kind of a starting point. I think maybe a next starting point is looking at adding in additional attributes about that customer. The base core information can still be very informational, very valuable to enhancing that customer experience. But as we kind of get more intelligent about that customer, we can start to add additional use cases, right? We can start to then run marketing campaigns. We can start to then do those analytics on the background, in the background that we talked about to start segmenting and prioritizing customer groups or identifying risk. So I don't think any starting point is wrong. I've also worked and had conversations with many different financial institutions where they say, my MDM is fine. It's been providing a good single view for the last 10 years, and we've been successful at, being able to manage our customers with it, but we want to go to the next level now. We want to start taking in something like social media. We want to start looking at our click-through data to get more intelligent about where our customers are going, how they're finding information. So those are kind of the next steps as you get more and more sophisticated. But there's really no wrong starting point, I would say.
Well, super. Last chance, folks, for any questions for Jennifer McGinn from Allsite. Any more questions for Jennifer? Well, super. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up then. We'll get an early start on the rest of the day. Thank you, Jennifer McGinn, for all of the insightful discussion. We sure appreciate it. And thanks, of course, to everyone who dialed in for your participation. Remember to visit and subscribe to the CU Lytics YouTube channel to access a recording of this and all CU Lytics webinars. And join us next month on February 27th for another great webinar presented, and then on March 13th through 15th for the CU Analytics Summit in Redmond. For the whole team at CU Lytics, I'm Dale DeVaz, wishing all of you a great day and great success with your analytics programs. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Dale.